Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse from Law Astrology, and in this recording I'm going to be looking at the astrology of March 2023. So this is a huge month. It's the most important month of the year as far as astrology is concerned. It's like everything is coming at us. I feel like my head is swiveling looking at all of these aspects. So much is happening. We've got two major ingresses with Saturn and Pluto changing signs. We have two triple conjunctions. We have the Equinox, so the beginning of the astrological year. And we also have the continuing story of Pluto anaretic in Capricorn, which of course will change when Pluto moves into Aquarius towards the end of the month. So it is massive. We begin the month with Venus conjunct Jupiter. So this is like a cosmic kiss from the skies with the lesser and greater benefic meeting in the skies. It reminds us to have our hearts open, to be grateful for the abundance that life can bring. It is also swelling our desire for independence. Aries is a sign that is very much about me first. Now that sometimes can be in a selfish way, but in a positive way. There is certainly a magnification of the need for the practice of self-love. Now essentially Venus is involving herself with this growing triple conjunction that will perfect later on this month. So we have Vesta, Jupiter, Venus, Chiron, all speaking with one another here. So it's a very powerful picture that speaks of the need to really drop into our hearts and figure out, understand what is important to us, what we truly value in this world. And then just as this is happening, Mercury then enters Pisces, so it moves away from a conjunction on the anaretic degree with Saturn. So there's a lot of serious thinking and serious concerns that have been going on, and maybe that's why we need to really be coming from a heart-centered place to deal with some of the serious issues that have been going on in society. And then Mercury goes into Pisces and it asks us to relax the mind and reminds us that we need to listen to the voice of the unconscious. So the way we do that is by listening to our dreams, by meditating, by writing poetry or listening to music, opening up to spiritual language, to symbolic language, watching for synchronicities, because everything is connected. Mercury in Pisces reminds us that everything is connected. We are all connected, and everything out there is connected. We are part of something much greater. And sometimes this is hard for the mind to comprehend. So we can't really make sense of it on a conscious level. Unconsciously, however, we can make sense of it. So this is why it's important for us to find space and time just to breathe and allow for that voice of the soul to come through. On the 3rd of March, we have Saturn semi-sextile Pluto. So that aspect on these anaretic degrees is now exact. And some really good questions that we could be asking ourselves around this time is, where am I resisting some kind of change? So Saturn in Aquarius, we're trying to build a foundation for the future, and we're getting serious about what we need to do to progress in life. And Pluto in Capricorn is changing the structures, changing the systems. But sometimes we can resist that, even though we know that changes are needed. We can sort of try to hold on to everything that we have already because it feels safer. You know, the known is always better than the unknown as far as the human brain is concerned. So Saturn semi-sextile to Pluto, a semi-sextile can be a helpful aspect just to explore, where am I resisting the changes that need to happen to ensure that my future is solid and stable. On the 7th of March, we have the full moon in Virgo. So the moon will be in Virgo. The sun is in Pisces. There is the opposition, which does create some kind of tension as we get to the peak of the lunar cycle. With the full moon in Virgo, we have a real need to see some kind of improvement. We're very focused on the details. What is it that I can tweak here or change here to make things better? We just want it to be better. The sun in Pisces is kind of reflecting the perfection of the universe. It's reflecting to us that yes, everything really is connected, and that there is the potential for miracles, and there is the potential that we are protected and guided by these invisible forces. But the moon in practical Virgo is almost saying, like, seeing is believing. I need to see some kind of proof that things are going to get better. And the challenge is that both the sun and the moon are square to Mars. So now we've also got some frustration here. Mars in Gemini, of course, we're coming towards the end of the story of Mars in Gemini, but Mars is still in the shadow zone. So we've still got some rumbles going on here with divided opinions or feeling split about what is best to do. And we may find ourselves feeling quite caught up in our very sort of instinctive, reactive responses. This is the moon square to Mars. This speaks of, sort of feeling angry, leaping up when someone says something that we don't like, or we read something that we don't like, and it's kind of pressing our buttons. And then the square to the sun, that can also bring in sort of ego issues as well, and the feeling of identifying far too much with our opinion or certain opinions. But also because the sun is over there in Pisces, we're getting some kind of sense of mixed signals as well. It's like the information or other people are saying one thing, but our feelings are saying something different. So it feels a bit muddled. So the best way that we can deal with the tensions that are at this lunation is to look at, well, what are my true needs? What will keep me healthy? What will keep me well? Because sometimes with the moon in Virgo, we can get so caught up in worrying about everything, literally everything, with the sun in Pisces. Pisces represents the entirety of the cosmos. So there's this overwhelming worry with Mars animating the mind as well. So perhaps then we need to still the mind, so that we can figure out what is the best action to take. And it might only be small actions that we need to take to make small improvements that will kind of build over time. The most important advice really for this lunation is to take things step by step as well, like one thing at a time, because if we try to fix everything immediately, because Mars is bringing in an impatience. So if we try to fix everything immediately, then that is likely to give us a lot more anxiety and stress, and it's too much to handle. It's like too hot to handle with Mars in Gemini. Gemini is kind of connected to the hands. So it's too hot to handle. So we need to take it step by step. Just identify what's most important, and then we can figure out where we can best place our energies. Now, I find it very interesting that we have this lunation, this full moon in Virgo, on the very same day that Saturn enters Pisces. Now, I'm going to be posting a much longer video on this transit, so I won't go into everything here, but just for a flavour of what we are working with as Saturn goes into Pisces on a collective level, there is something on working on our spirituality, working on our sense of faith and belief. There is the possibility of manifesting our greatest dreams. Saturn is the manifester. But conversely, we could also have this feeling that structures are dissolving. We don't know what's real and what isn't. because Saturn can also represent the authorities and the system. Maybe it seems like everything is very vague, it's all very uncertain, and the uncertainty is difficult to deal with if we don't have some kind of inner anchor. So this is why it's important during this transit to really look at what our deepest beliefs are and to work on that connection to ourselves, our soul, to each other, and of course to the cosmos as a whole. Again, we're in Pisces territory. So this is the interconnectedness of all things, and yet Saturn can speak of a wall. So maybe this is the problem, that we are struggling to see that interconnection, and that is why we have to work on things. Now, in the mundane world, the possibilities are that we have some kind of problems with waterborne diseases, or we just have problems with water, for example, pollution or rising sea levels. There is the possibility that because this sign is associated with the church and Saturn can speak of things that are established and institutions, we may see some very significant shifts in that, or maybe a lot of questions are being asked around those establishments. We could also say that maybe there are some issues about how religion or spiritual thought is influencing the rules or the regulations in some way. So there's a lot of different possibilities with Saturn going into Pisces, and some of them are really beautiful, dreams made manifest, miracles becoming real, the potential for the invisible world to become visible, to become tangible, something that we have not seen before now becomes a reality. But because there is that feeling at times of being on kind of slippery ground, it's going to be extra important for each of us to be really clear on how we can best make that inner connection. So to feel as though I can access my own wisdom, my own knowing, especially when times are confusing and disorientating. On the 12th of March, we have the first of the triple conjunctions. This is going to be the conjunction of Jupiter, Chiron and Vesta, all at 14 degrees of Aries. This is a powerful conjunction. I am going to be doing a bigger piece just on this, dedicated to this over on my Patreon, so I can explore it more in depth. But just for a flavour of what this conjunction is going to be about, Chiron in Aries tells us that the healing work that we need to do at the moment is centered around issues connected with anger, with how we take action, how we initiate things. It's connected to our independence and our confidence. And Chiron in Aries, sometimes when we have this as a natal aspect, and I can include myself in that, we can feel like almost like we don't belong, that we shouldn't be here. There can be a tendency to feel like there is something fundamentally wrong with ourselves. But of course, though, we've been on this journey a while now. This is 14 degrees of Aries, so almost at the halfway point. And as Jupiter comes up to meet Chiron then, I think there is the potential for us to see the gifts, to perceive, to understand that this suffering and healing has not been for nothing. It's been for everything. It's so that we can take advantage of the abundance that life has to offer. With Jupiter conjunct Chiron, the key, remembering that Chiron's symbol is a key shape, the key is self-belief. The key is to have faith in ourselves. What's so interesting is that this Jupiter-Vesta-Chiron conjunction is going to be quickly followed by the other triple conjunction, and this time it's going to be Mercury, the Sun and Neptune. They are all joining together in Pisces. The Sun is conjunct Neptune on March the 15th, Mercury conjunct Neptune is on March the 16th, and then the Sun conjunct Mercury is on March the 17th. So it feels like it's very much a time to let go of who we think we are and get back to the core self, the core soul self. It's about releasing distorted self-concepts, letting go of the lies that we've been told, and letting go of the lies that we tell ourselves. All three of these planets are square to Mars, so it's not an easy picture. Mercury square to Mars can be argumentative, and the Sun square to Mars shows us that sometimes we can identify too much with our own opinions. There are times that we may feel like giving up, and this is particularly with Mars square to Neptune. That's exact on March the 14th, by the way. So Neptune dissipates Martian energy and will. It can feel like there's no tangible results for our efforts, and this is why we feel like we've had enough. There's no point trying anymore. Or for some of us, maybe we just don't know what to do because Neptune is clouding everything. It's like a fog. We can't see what we're meant to be doing. But Mars-Neptune aspects, these are the signature of the spiritual warrior. So we must trust our intuition to guide us. If we disregard our intuitive prompts around this time and think of them as irrational, then that's when we tend to get more frustrated. Going back to the fact that we have all these conjunctions in play, if we think for a moment about the nature of the conjunction, conjunctions are about blending influences together. It reminds me of the Temperance card in the tarot that shows this angel mixing together the contents of two cups. And sometimes it can seem like there is no way to blend everything together, to bring things together, to bond. There's no way to reconcile these opposing or different views. And yet all these conjunctions, all these influences suggest that we need to find a way to bring everything together, pretty much like Saturn in Pisces. In the midst of all of this, Venus is going to enter Taurus on March the 16th. And given that Taurus is an earth sign and that Venus rules this sign, hopefully this will give us a little bit of solid ground to walk on. So this transit will help us to become more aware of what feels comfortable and what doesn't. This is a very practical, uncomplicated sign where simplicity works best. The focus is on security and what is most important. How worthy do you feel of the good things in life? What do you value and what is valuable about you? What resources are at your disposal to bring greater comfort and security into your life? These are the things that Venus in Taurus thinks about. I think it's important to tap into this transit, particularly because Mars is still square to Neptune and will continue to be in that aspect until April the 2nd. So, in other words, it's really easy to get distracted and chase after the wrong things, and then to get disillusioned when we realise that these things are unobtainable or they seem to disappear as soon as we touch them. If it feels like everything you touch is just kind of slipping through your fingers, then it would be good to just get back to basics. This is the nature of Taurus. Venus in Taurus. Focus on simple pleasures and identify what makes me feel good. Some of the watery picture will begin to dissipate on March the 19th as Mercury will enter Aries on this date, and that is quickly followed by the Sun's entry into Aries on March the 20th. So now we arrive at Equinox, spring in the Northern Hemisphere and autumn in the Southern Hemisphere. Equinox is the herald of the turning of the season, and the Sun's ingress into Aries is the start of the astrological new year. And I think it's important to mention that the Sun's ingress into Aries also heralds International Astrology Day as well. So Mercury goes into Aries, the Sun goes into Aries, and then we have a new moon in Aries. This is on March the 21st. Now, this new moon packs a punch. because it's going to be on the Aries point. So this is 0 degrees of Aries. The Aries point is extremely animated. It can actually be associated with fame because it has this vibe of being larger than life. So this is a larger than life lunation that also happens to be tightly opposed to Ceres. And we also have another square to Mars in Gemini. It seems a little bit like Mars in Gemini is determined to have the last word. But anyway, so this new moon in Aries is a time to set intentions around our personal desires, wants, and goals. But that opposition to Ceres suggests that we might have to balance what we want with tending to our relationships. So Ceres is actually retrograde at the moment. So there's already some serious reassessment going on with how much we feel loved or cherished in our closest relationships. And Mars, of course, well, we've got the same story about how do we resolve differences of opinion. Can we articulate what we want without starting an argument? Can we assert what we need without getting aggressive? Can we compromise without getting triggered? These are some of the questions that are going to arise around this lunation. And then we reach the big one, Pluto's entry into Aquarius on March the 23rd. Now, I've already posted 3 videos about this where I explored this transit in full and looked at Pluto in Aquarius through the houses for the signs. So I will link those videos below in case you haven't seen them. So suffices to say that we are beginning a new 20-year chapter where there are going to be some very big changes in society. There may be big changes as far as our political systems are concerned, certainly as far as technology is concerned. There are changes with our cultural awareness. There's changes in how we see ourselves as a race, the human race. And also there is the potential for people power. Power to the people is one of the phrases that I'm using for Pluto in Aquarius. It's a transit that is often connected to revolutionary change and changes born from revolutions. It's interesting that Meta and Twitter have just announced these subscription models for social media. So this came out after I made my recording for Pluto in Aquarius. So I was thinking, I wonder whether this is going to herald the death, Pluto, of social media, Aquarius, or I guess it would be a very significant regeneration. Hopefully that's going to be constructive rather than destructive. Now, as Pluto is only having a short stay in Aquarius this year, this is going to be a preview of things to come. So just pay attention to what is coming up around this time, both in your own life and in the collective, as this can be a sign of the material that we're going to be working with going forwards. Lastly, for March, after 7 months journeying through Gemini, Mars will finally exit this sign and enter Cancer on March the 25th. Cancer is a water sign ruled by the moon, so it's very connected to the feeling response. In Cancer then, Mars can be more emotionally reactive. Or, positively speaking, we are more able to follow our gut instincts to inform our actions. Our motivation switches from the desire to learn and connect in Gemini to a desire to protect what we hold dear in Cancer. Cancer is always concerned with safety, so our inner warrior can become acutely aware of where defenses feel vulnerable. Correspondingly, we can be overly defensive when Mars is in Cancer. And I think this defensiveness and the predisposition to be overly defensive may be more accentuated around this time because we've just had these 2 massive shifts with Saturn and Pluto changing signs, and we still have that Mars square to Neptune in play. So it kind of feels like we're super conscious of our weak points. whether they are real or imagined. And because we are feeling super sensitive, then that is why we can be a lot more defensive. Generally speaking, Mars in Cancer is traditionally said to be in its fall in this sign. So it kind of struggles a little bit in this sign. Capricorn is where Mars is exalted. So the opposite sign, Capricorn, is where Mars is exalted. Because in Capricorn, Mars can combine discipline and the will to climb mountains. It can surmount problems. It can build empires. But in Cancer, the energy we expend is less about achievement out there in the world, and it's much more about exploring how we feel about our goals. Sometimes we find that the things that we've been fighting for don't really matter, or that maybe we achieved a goal, but it didn't give us the thrill that we anticipated. And then, of course, sometimes we fail to achieve our objectives. When Mars is in Cancer, we have a chance to reflect on all these things. And whilst we still have that square to Neptune, maybe we can make peace with the past. To channel this transit effectively, this can be a really excellent time to put our energies into our home life, to work on past patterns and to reflect on our responses, to understand where our motivations and reactions come from. Putting the energy into this now will help us to regain our footing and find our strengths again. This concludes my forecast for March 2023. I hope you found it helpful. If you would like to hear more from me, then do check out my Patreon. I will put the link below. And in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.